Now, folks, if you'll just gather around a little closer now. Come right in a little closer. That's it. That's fine, folks.
Synergy is the word I want to start with. There is no synergy between Tyson Fury and Olexandr Usyk. Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury had more synergy than Tyson Fury has with Usyk. Now that might not be reflected in the pay-per-view numbers, but America's going through what it's going through. All three Fury Wilder fights were in America. America is still paying for how they rubbished the Klitschkos. And there's nothing wrong with rubbishing the Klitschkos, but you got to allow them to play out their title reigns. You can't throw them off when they got a title reign. It's the heavyweight championship. And America has been an integral part of the heavyweight championship. You can't just shit on them and we don't care about heavyweight boxing because we got two guys who we don't like or we don't relate to. And America's never recovered from it. They've never recovered. And it doesn't mean they won't, but they've never recovered. The last time two white men contested the undisputed heavyweight title, Marciano versus Roland Nastarza. Nastarza gave Rocky a tough fight in their first fight. Rematch, Rocky defended his title. He punched him out of the ropes and was more convincing this time around. The last undisputed Caucasian heavyweight champion, probably Ingemar Johansson, thinking about it now. Probably Ingemar Johansson. When he came to America and was bouncing Floyd Patterson up and down like a basketball and took his undisputed claim. And we're going back to the 50s with that, early 60s when they had their trilogy. If you had asked me, can you see two Caucasian heavyweights challenging for the undisputed heavyweight titles in the 80s or 90s? I would have said you're off your box. In the 80s, when Don King had a stranglehold on the division, the Ring magazine or the sanctioning belt rankings would show you a list of fighters who were African American for the most part, mostly promoted by Don King. So yeah, a few milestones. A white undisputed heavyweight champion will be crowned. The first white undisputed heavyweight champion since Ingemar Johansson some 65 years ago. And if Usyk wins, it will be a milestone for the Eastern European heavyweight, who's been kicking at the door since the Klitschkos put on their size 10s and started hammering away at it. And, you know, the Eastern European heavyweights did change the landscape from the African American demographic. And Lennox Lewis, a black Canadian, I guess Brit. Eastern Europe, they produce Vitaly Klitschko, Vladimir Klitschko, Valuev, Maskayev, Shagayev, Lajkovic, Ibragimov, and Usyk looks to be the third Ukrainian to be world champion and the first to be undisputed. Usyk actually turned pro with the Klitschkos and K2 Promotions in 2013. He left around late 2020, 2021. And if Tyson Fury wins it, it will be symbolic because Britain, with Lennox Lewis, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua making their way. I think we've got rid of the horizontal heavyweight tag. We've got rid of that now. And if Fury wins and we get that Anthony Joshua showdown, the only problem is, like, how do we keep it in Britain, a fight like that? It should be in Britain, really. As much as I give props to the Saudis, this ain't Adelaide challenging Fabio Wardley for the British title, where the title was contested outside of the British shores for the first time. This is undisputed between two British fighters, the ultimate domestic showdown. And it's not going to be at Wembley Stadium or White Hart Lane or the Millennium or wherever. Like, that's crazy. But, you know, it's nice to have problems like that. First four-belt heavyweight champion in the history of the sport, contested by two Europeans. Very symbolic fight. Why did the Klitschko clan not get the response from America? Because when they were champions, you had to break America. It was a must. We're coming out of that phase now with the Saudi, the UK emerging with stadium fights before the Saudis. Was it xenophobia, tribalism?
Were they just boring? Not just in the ring, but outside the ring?
New York with famed legendary boxing writer Bert Sugar. And Bert, first off, let's start with the bad. What'd you think of the fight?
I figured out a new way to spell Klitschko, T-E-R-R-I-B-L-E. I think Primo Carnera, who's dead, could have beaten him. This was a terrible night. I have figured out my first heavyweight championship fight was when I was 5 years old, 1941, Washington, D.C., Joe Louis, Buddy Bear. Don't remember much about it, but I went. 67 years. This was the worst championship fight, any division I've ever seen. Sultan somebody and Vladimir somebody stunk out the joint. Period. Nah, the hell with periods, comma. Hopefully there's no return bout contract.
Do you think that Klitschko is the best in the world right now, or do you care?
I don't give a daggone. He is terrible. If he's the best heavyweight division, that might reinforce the fact the heavyweight division stinks.
Bert Randolph Sugar, boxing writer and historian, R.I.P. The man was a legend. He's good at what he did. But the whole Primo Carnera beats the Klitschko thing, a bit over the top. Carnero was a stooge, basically, who the mafia used and abused in a whole load of fixed fights. The truth is, Vitaly Klitschko's fights weren't as boring as some may have been led to believe by the American media especially. Now Vladimir, after shock losses to the incredibly tough Ross Purity when he was a contender, and then losing to the likes of Corey Sanders in an upset loss with Vlad's WBO title at stake, and then the suspicious looking collapse against Lamont Brewster for the vacant WBO. Yeah, he hooked up with Manny Stewart. Manny was actually in the corner for the first Lamont Brewster fight where Vlad was stopped, and the rematch. And yeah, they could suck the fucking life out of a fight, yeah, no doubt. But we're talking about an Olympic gold medalist here. And we're talking about the legacy of American boxing. Still the most successful country to participate in World Heavyweight Championship level boxing. The issue started after that unification fight with Ibragimov around 2008. Vlad had the IBF and IBO titles. Ibragimov had the WBO belt. I remember the Shagayev fight. That should have been a unification, but for whatever reasons, Shagayev's belt wasn't on the line. But the American media, they weren't impressed. They weren't impressed with that. And then HBO reneged on a deal that was basically done with a gentleman's handshake to air Vlad taking on Povetkin. They went back on their word. And by the time they went to hit up Showtime to do the fight, you know, the schedules were all out of link with what Showtime wanted to do. And it cost Buente $250,000 according to him, because, you know, they couldn't get the deal with Showtime. And they threatened not to fight on HBO again. HBO, around 2010, they said they weren't going to air heavyweight championship boxing no more. And a lot of people say Beats is a hater. I mean, like, you hate American boxing. No, I was actually following it. Like, I always had a boxing news. I was watching the Klitschko on all different platforms. Sky, I think Sentanta and whoever else were delivering their fights. ITV. So I was always following it, reading the boxing news. So I always knew what was going on. And there was a period when they weren't airing the title fights live. And there was a period between 2010, I want to say, maybe the Pulev fight or the Bryant James fight, where they weren't airing the fights live. They weren't airing some of them at all, neither Showtime or HBO. There were some delayed recordings that got out on them two networks, but they basically killed the heavyweight division in America. Vladimir wasn't exciting, but he was the unified heavyweight champion. And because America couldn't produce anyone to topple him, an American champion of good standing, they just abandoned the heavyweight division. We didn't do that over here, has to be said. Deontay Wilder is considerably older than Anthony Joshua. He's older than Tyson Fury. But Fury got to Vlad before Wilder did, And so did AJ. And Deontay had a belt before Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Jared Anderson, is he the next guy? All I know, this is the first undisputed heavyweight title fight not involving an American. The first. Caucasian or African American. The first. Wilder turned pro in 2008. And they moved him too slow. Bottom line, they moved him too slow. And they're reaping what they sow. Underperformed against Joseph Parker, washed on the scorecards, declined a rematch or even to try and get a rematch, and then ducked the Zhang fight. Never unified a belt in his career. You know, perhaps Jared Anderson, if he's dedicated enough, but you know, he's already shown mental cracks and he hasn't even fought for a belt yet. He hasn't even fought a top 5 opponent yet and he's showing mental cracks. Perhaps he could win a belt. I don't see him being a long-term champ or anything like that though. I don't see that in Jared Anderson. But yeah, milestones being hit with this upcoming fight. No American involvement in an undisputed heavyweight contest.
Usyk is a talent, a generational talent, but he can't sell a fight for shit. He really can't. Tyson Fury, the other week in training camp for this fight, he was calling Usyk the midget, this, that, rabbit, and all this, but it didn't have the same effect that his smack talkers previously had on the likes of Deontay Wilder and Vladimir Klitschko. It didn't have the same effect. And the Francis Ngannou fight has knocked a lot of luster off Tyson Fury. And it's knocked a lot of luster from the heavyweight division, that a UFC champion who's never had a professional fight can not only take Tyson Fury the distance, but lose a narrow split decision and have Tyson Fury on the canvas, while Francis Ngannou himself wasn't even remotely troubled once in the fight by Tyson Fury's punches. At the Anthony Joshua Ngannou press conference in London, Turkey Al-Sheikh seemed to be implying that he needs Anthony Joshua to get some get back for boxing, and he was looking at Ngannou as to say, you can't just come in here and take over boxing, beat up Tyson Fury and this and that. Ngannou defiantly said, that's not going to happen, paraphrasing, as he should. Is it a little bit overdramatic to say the reputation of the sport is in AJ's hands to restore order? AJ is the man that Turkey has selected for the job. If that's the case, there are a lot of people in media and boxing who don't want to see MMA fighters dominating boxing, and a lot of fans who just don't want to see it. And I can understand why. I understand why. It makes it look like what we've been supporting and what the practitioners have been practicing isn't as formidable as we all talk it up to be. While the MMA, UFC fans would like nothing better but to take a huge dump in the middle of the Noble Arts Parade. It could also hype up a lot of MMA practitioners to try their luck on this side of the street. And let's face it, UFC don't seem as hot as it once was. Who are the attractions? There's no Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Francis Ngannou isn't there. Who are the attractions right now? It's not as hot as it once was. So they could be almost desperate for Francis Ngannou to turn over AJ, to give their sport a boost. There is no buzz. There is no buzz for Usyk versus Fury. Maybe because it's not being held in the UK. Maybe. I don't know what it's like in the Ukraine. But there's still people talking about AJ and Wilder would have been bigger. AJ and Fury would have been bigger. They're still saying that. And we're talking about Fury versus Usyk, undisputed, all the marbles. Hopefully the buzz starts to pick up, hopefully. And I believe it will. Tyson has gone into his shell, and maybe that's not a bad thing. You know, stop clowning around, buckle down to your training, because he didn't look impressive last time out against Ngannou. He didn't. His body has looked better. It's not a bodybuilding contest, but it has looked better. But he did say that he wasn't taking Francis Ngannou lightly. He did say that, and I believe him. I'm not in the camp who thinks that he took him lightly. Some people saying, oh, he didn't prepare hard enough. Sometimes the wear and tear don't allow you to prepare hard enough. The aging process, the wear and tear don't allow you to prepare hard enough. Sometimes boxers just do the best they can. Overtraining when your body's vulnerable will just lead to more injuries, obviously. No murmurs from out of the Usyk camp so far. They've kept a tight lid on it. The Jai Opataya sparring rumours, after only doing 5 rounds with Fury, is doing its rounds right now. Trending. Did he deck Fury? Did he put the hands on him? Did he disrespect the champion in the champion's camp? Well, Jai's a champion himself. He's a Ring Magazine Cruiserweight champion. Sparring stories are great because we do need something to talk about while we await the first bell. Getting knocked out or hurt badly in sparring or training, I think generally we'd have to say it's not a good thing. But I'll go back to the 80s when Jimmy Tibbs was training Lloyd Honeyghan, and he said in his book that David Dent, a welterweight from Camden in London, knocked Lloyd Honeyghan out in a sparring session. And then shortly after, Lloyd Honeyghan went over to Italy and knocked out Gianfranco Rossi for the European welterweight title. Spectacular win. Rossi went on to be a credible 154-pound world champion in his own right. Lloyd went over there and did the business. Sugar Ray Leonard, preparing for Marvin Hagler, was apparently going toe-to-toe with his sparring partners, because Ray, despite the pretty boy image, he used to like beating people up. That's what he was best at, is beating people up. A lot of people, when they think about a generic version of Ray Leonard, is the tassels on the boots and the bolo punches and the shuffle. But you go look at some of the finishes and the knockouts. He puts people on the canvas and he hurts them, busting people up. I'd go as far as to say one of the hardest punching 147-pound fighters of all time. I'd go as far as that. So what was it? It was, I ain't got a box rec here. 1984, where he fought Kevin Howard. And he was coming off a layoff in that fight there, long layoff, after retina surgery. He didn't look like prime Leonard against Kevin Howard. He was flawed. He got back up and he rallied to stop Howard late in the fight. Controversial stoppage in many people's opinion. Then he retired again. He saw Hagler struggle against John the Beast Mugabe when he was commentating on that fight for HBO. Then the light bulb went off in his head. This is the time to get Marvin. The fight was announced. Ray went into camp. Ray's training with these middleweight sparring partners. So during these spars, a fighter that Ray once managed, I don't know if he was managing him then, Quincy Taylor, incapacitated Ray with one shot, had him out on his feet, and they had to stop the sparring session. Had him out on his feet. You know, Ray's there training with these big dudes after being inactive for so long. I don't know how much time there was in between that sparring session and the Hagler fight, but I'm assuming Ray, Angelo Dundee were in a bit of a jam. What do we do now? We can't fight Marvin Hagler after this. And according to rumor, there was a bit of a downer in the camp, and that's understandable. So they stripped down their plans now. We're not going to go toe-to-toe with Hagler. We're not going to go for the stoppage. We're going to go for Sugar Ray Leonard versus Duran, the fight that produced the Nomas. Stick and move, hit and not get hit. And me being a Marvin Hagler fan, him being my favorite fighter, I'm not keen on the Ray Leonard Hagler fight. I think Marvin won it. Well, you know, you grow up, you give Ray's credit, great boxing performance. He actually stole the title from Marvin. He stole it. Showmanship, ring generalship, I guess you can call it. Showboating, flurrying towards the end of the round to catch the judge's eyes, and yeah, he done what he had to do. He had his tactics spot on.
You really knew you had him, I think, at that point, don't you?
Well,
it wouldn't go much longer.
I told him it's all Rumbo business today. There's no messing around. It's all ragamuffin stuff, you know?
I'm also entertaining that perhaps they put this story together. You know, Jai out of the camp after 5 rounds. What happened? Did he drop Tyson? I mean, Jai's on the card as well. Why would Tasman Fighters make an official statement to tell everybody, no, Tyson Fury wasn't dropped. Why would it be that serious? Why wouldn't they just go about their business? It could be an elaborate hoax to get some much needed attention to a fight that is dipping way below the radar.